Well, welcome to Happy Home. We're so glad that you are here. This is a brief series. If you blink, you're going to miss it. So stay with us over the next 4 weeks and then on into our rally that'll wrap up our Happy Home series. The beauty of what we're going to share in the next few weeks is that these apply into every type of home that we have represented here today. Homes without children, homes with children, homes with too many children. It's going to work for all of us. First marriage, second marriage, blended family, colliding family, whatever it might be that's going on in your reality right now in your home. These precepts are going to work in your home. In fact, let me say this to you. If you're visiting with us today, someone dragged you to church, you're not sure you're glad you're here yet, you're not quite sure what's going on, you're listening in and wondering, let me tell you something. You've picked a great week to join us here at Real Life, because even if you understand or have interest in very little of the other things that have gone on in this service, if you're not a Christ follower, we welcome you here today, and I want you to know that the things that I'm about to share with you will apply and will work in your home, whether you currently are a Christ follower or not, because these are precepts that will work in your home, and so we hope that you'll listen in. If you're joining us online or even on our live stream right now, you picked a great time to tune in, because what we say will apply to you. Let me say to those of you who are single today, and you're like, well, I don't know if I picked a great week. You picked a perfect week to be here, because you get to sit back, put your feet up a little bit, laugh at all the others who really need to be listening carefully, and apply all this stuff into their lives. Or better yet, you get to listen in carefully so that you can apply them as you eventually get into the place where you are married and you build a home and those type of things. In fact, here's the reality. Everybody picks a good weekend to be in church, because everybody here at some point somehow relates to a family. All of us do. And so I got to thinking about, what's the commonality? Because our family demographics are so different in age and build up and makeup, what's the commonality for all of us? And I think I found a statement that I can make that is true for every single person in this room. This is the one I found, and it's this: not one of us currently lives in a perfect family. We all live in a family of some sort, but not one of us lives in a perfect family. And all the honest people of God said, amen to that. You know, I was 7 years old when the stark realization of the imperfection of my family landed heavily on me. It happened in the lunchroom at school. As a second grader and part of the Crofford family, I was getting out the lunch that I had brought. Now, let me tell you how lunch worked at my house. You know, I had a big family, 6 brothers, and when I was in second grade, 5 of those boys were all in school at the same time. And so making lunch was an evening event before we went to bed. It was on a rotational basis. Different brothers would do it, but the assembly line looked exactly the same every night. Bag of white bread, lay out the pieces, and then a package of bologna, 1 slice of bologna slapped onto each sandwich. After that came out the Kraft American singles, the ones you have to unwrap. Can I tell you something today? That is not really cheese. I just want you to know that, and I, to this day, am diametrically opposed to any cheese like that that's wrapped into individual pieces, so please don't give it to me, because I will not eat it. When you grab cheese, you should not be able to shake it like that. And on would go the Kraft American single, then some mustard, the other piece of bread, that would get slipped into a Ziploc bag. That was then put into a brown bag. You know what the brown bag for lunches were? In there would go an apple, bruised or not, in it went. And then the highlight of the meal was a Little Debbie oatmeal cream pie, and that was lunch. Now, that was lunch, the same lunch I got every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday at my house, we really shook things up, replaced the aforementioned bologna and cheese sandwich with tuna fish that was stretched out a little bit because we had just 1 can to go amongst 5 kids, so a little extra mayo, a little less meat, spread it out on the bread. We got tuna on Fridays, and we weren't even Catholic, and we got tuna on Fridays. My mom grew up Baptist. I guess they do it there too. I don't know. And that was lunch. I thought that was fine until I sat down in the lunchroom and found my good friend Kevin Bacchus, who was a part of my church. Now, Kevin was virtually an only child, because by second grade, he actually had a baby sister who was like just been born, so it was, big age spread, and so it was like he was an only child. And Kevin's mom made his lunch every night. She must have taken all night making that thing. Because I'm not making up what I'm about to say to you, because every day at lunch, he had a different kind of sandwich. One day, he'd have roast beef. Man, he'd have ham and cheese with cheddar cheese. And I mean, he'd have all these great things. He even made peanut butter and jelly look good today, so he had that. But on top of that, he'd always have a bag of chips, and his mom must have gotten that Frito-Lay assortment pack, because it wasn't just the same boring straight Lay's chips every day. One day he's got Doritos, the next day he's got Fritos, and then he's got barbecue. He's got all these chips. I mean, every day it seems like, what you got for lunch today, dude? And, and some days he had pudding cups. I never got pudding cups growing up. He'd have a pudding cup in there, and he wouldn't get some old apple, because whatever his mom had done for fruit, like he'd have like grapes that all looked like they'd been hand washed and pecked off the vine with love and put in a bag for him. And some days he'd have an orange. She'd already peeled it for him and even pulled off all that little skin hairy stuff that you get off the edge of orange. All just perfect slices of orange. That's what he have. But look, I could have lived with all of that if it weren't for the fact that Kevin Bacchus every day finished his meal with something home-baked that his mom had made. No Little Debbie's for that boy, man. Homemade brownie, homemade chocolate chip cookies. He'd have a thermos with Kool-Aid or High C or some other colorful, sugar-filled drink inside of it. But worst of all, he would unpack that lunch out of a Superman lunchbox. And when I was 7 years old, I realized how imperfect my family was. And I said, I don't want to be a Crofford. I want to be a Bacchus. You ever remember feeling that way? Comparing your family to someone else? They do cooler stuff in that family. They have a camper in that family. Did you ever go over and hang out at your friend's house and look at his cupboard and go, you have cooler snacks than we do at our house? They get to do vacations, or they get to do that. Or you look at them and go, boy, you don't have these obnoxious, mean brothers, or these annoying little sisters, or whatever it is you had. And at some point you're just like, I just want to trade families. Why did God do this to me? Then we get older, and maybe we set some of those things that we think are silly or other ways unimportant aside. But as we get older, we don't stop comparing. We just change it into things like this. God, how come it seems so difficult for us to have a happy home? Because I see other homes and they look happier than ours. They seem better at this somehow than we are. God, do they know some secrets that I don't know? Because, man, it just seems somehow easier for everyone else. So here's the first thing I want to tell you as we start our Happy Home series, and it's this. Family relationships aren't easy for anyone. I don't know if that discourages you or encourages you, but it's the honest truth, so I'm going to repeat it. Family relationships aren't easy for anyone. In fact, if you pick up your Bible and start reading through the stories of relationships, particular family relationships in the Bible will tell you more about dysfunctional families before it was even a word. Crazy stuff inside of families and family relationships. You only got to go 4 chapters into the Bible to discover inside of the first family that one brother kills another. Go a few more chapters in and you'll find a whole bunch of brothers selling their own brother into slavery. Not just thinking about it like you and I have, but we realized we couldn't get anything for him. Actually did it. Sold their brother. King Solomon, who by record is the wisest man on the planet, man, his kids were such a mess, they ended up splitting the kingdom down the middle and messing it all up. Get into the New Testament, Jesus' own parents lost him for 2 days, and it took them 2 days to figure out they'd lost him. And if you think that's not messed up enough, I'm not making this up. Some of you don't know this story, but if you go to the book of Mark, chapter 3, you will read that there were some religious leaders that came to Jesus' brothers and sisters and said to him, your brother is demon-possessed. Talking about Jesus. Jesus is demon-possessed. And you know what they said? No, our brother's not demon-possessed. He's just insane. That's what they answered. He's just nuts. Don't worry. We'll get him and lock him up. It's a true story. Family relationships aren't perfect anywhere, and they're not easy for anyone. And so really, maybe some of you, sometimes when things go a little sideways at our house and they're tense or things get said that shouldn't get said. The other day I thought to myself, well, I guess I could just lean over to my wife and say, well, honey, I guess we've just got a biblical family. Turn to someone next to you right now and go, maybe we've just got a biblical family. God, tell someone, maybe we just got a biblical family. And see, here's the challenge. Here's really where the rubber meets the road. When we realize the difference between what's real and the ideal, because somehow inside we know that whatever Pastor Todd's about to say to us, these precepts he's going to give us that are taught to us by Jesus and by his followers about how we can build and develop healthy families, we just know what's about to be shared isn't ideal, that maybe we realize we're far from. And when we see the difference between real and ideal, it makes some of us want to just bail. It makes us want to just kind of quit the sermon right here and go, well, that's kind of fun. We could just all leave and go, well, your family's just as messed up as mine is, so what can we expect? And we'll just go out and kind of just comfort ourselves with that. And that's how we'll live with the real versus the ideal. But along comes Jesus. And here's what Jesus does. Jesus doesn't lower the bar on the ideal so we'll just feel better about ourselves. In fact, if you watch how Jesus preaches, he actually raises the bar. Go to the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard you need to live like this. I say you need to live like this. That's what Jesus does. He actually stretches the difference between the real and the ideal. And then he says this, but while you aim for the ideal, I give you grace as you live in the real. I give you forgiveness and help and mercy and grace. And so here's what Jesus says. As you look at your family and the relationships inside of it, and you see a difference between what you long for it to be and what God's calling you to be and what it is, don't bail, prevail. Say, okay, I'm going to aim for the ideal. We're going to put into practice the things that we learn in these weeks that come from God's word. So let's begin with one of the greatest passages on families in the Bible. It comes from a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to a church in a town called Ephesus, which is in today what modern day would be Turkey. And Paul writes this at the very beginning of the instructions he's going to give for the whole family. And this first sentence is going to be the one we're going to key in on and learn from today, and then we're going to take the other ones underneath it. This is the umbrella idea over everything else he's going to say. You'll see it there on the screen, Ephesians 5:21. In fact, let's just read this verse together today. Read it with me. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's short. Let's read it one more time. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Before Paul tells husbands how we should act, and wives how we should act, and kids how they should treat their parents, and parents how they should treat their children, first he says this, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. This is what he says. There should be in reality a mutuality of submission. What do you mean? It means this. It means we so see the value in other people that we elevate their needs and their importance in our mind to recognize how valuable they are. To value someone deeply is called respect. And that is our first precept that we're going to work on today in families. And so there's the word. Say it with me. What's the word? Respect. The first thing we're going to put into practice is what? Respect. Say it one more time. Respect. Respecting one another is to recognize that every single person in your home has value. And when that happens, you'll begin to move towards that ideal of a happy home. If you could put yourself back in Paul's day and know how revolutionary, how dynamic, how radical this expression was, for Paul to say that we all were going to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ, that we all were going to have respect for each other. It was radical, and let me tell you why. In that day, the people who really mattered were men. In that Greek culture, here's how it worked. Men had value, and they owned everything else. And women and children, they owned women and children at a slightly higher value than they owned their donkey or their dog. It's just how it was. Not promoting it, just telling you culturally. And so it was expected a man might mistreat his donkey, he might mistreat his dog, he might mistreat his wife, he might mistreat his children, but that's just the way it is. And along comes Jesus and ultimately via Paul and says, no. It's not how it works. See the value in everyone. Jesus came and led such a revolution and a change in how we looked at women and children and saw them as equals in value to men. Jesus talks to women. Jesus listens to women. He heals women. He allows women to be carriers of the good news. It was a woman that first saw that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. In fact, it was a group of women. It was a woman who was the first person to hear words from Jesus' lips after he was raised from the dead. And women were a part of the central core group of the inside circle of what was the very first church. Jesus valued them that way. He said they mattered in this world every bit as much as men did. And let me tell you this, while there is still work that needs to be done on this front, the progress that women have made in our world, in any culture in which they're making process of being valued, you will find the seeds of this came from Christianity. Now, I'm not going to go all political on you today, but I am going to get geographical on you, and I'm going to say, look in nations where Christianity has not had the influence, and you will find lesser value of women than in the nations where Christianity has. There ought to be some woman in the room that'll say amen today. Now, look, there's work that needs to be done on this. There's work that still needs to be done on equal pay for equal work. There's work that still needs to be done on the level of respect and honor that needs to take place for women. There is elimination of ongoing abuse that needs to take place still inside of this culture as it relates to women. But hear me, so much of where women are at today is because Christianity has done this for them at its inception. Because of how Jesus valued women and considered them precious and worthy of respect. And children, you know, in Jesus' day, kids were meant to be kept out of the way. In fact, we had that very interesting passage in Scripture, I don't know if you've ever heard it, where the children were kind of crowding into what was going on as Jesus was teaching, and the adults are like, especially Jesus' bodyguards, his disciples, are like, whoa, let's kind of push those kids back. We got important adult stuff going on here. And as they're pushing the kids away, and Jesus is like halfway through his sermon, he just kind of stops and says, whoa, hang on. Whoa, bring those kids back. And he brings them up and he sets them on his lap and he says, don't you understand? Don't forbid kids to come to me because the kingdom of heaven belongs to ones like that. That's what he did for children. And what I'm saying to you today is this: if you want a happy home, there has to be a level of respect in your home that says, we value everyone here. We do it out of reverence for Christ. What does that mean? Submit to one another of reverence for Christ. It means that we recognize intrinsically someone is valuable because not only did God create them, but he sent Jesus to die on the cross for them. God sent Jesus to die on the cross for men. He sent Jesus to die on the cross for women. He sent Jesus to die on the cross for children. Peter, who we just studied, in the book we just studied, wrote, husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you in the gracious gift of life so that nothing will hinder your prayers. The idea here, when we talk about the idea of being the weaker part, does not mean less intelligent. It does not mean less valuable. It does not mean less capacity. It merely means that men, as a general rule inside of the human race, are the more physically imposing, and we so value how precious women are to God, their intrinsic value as daughters of God, that we would stand up for them and defend them. That's what this means. So there's this mutual respect that goes on. Husbands for wives and wives for husbands and parents for children and children for parents. All are equal because here's the deal. No one in the family is more important than anyone else. Say that with me today. No one in the family is more important than anyone else. Now, that doesn't mean we all have the same role in the family. There are positionally roles that we're going to play as parents and as children and husbands and wives, but we all have equal value. And so let's look through how this plays out. in these various relationships. Husbands and wives, Paul lays two commands side by side concerning husbands and wives. Look with me. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. So husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. These two ideas will only work. These two ideas about how wives and husbands find their position in marriage only work if both sides understand and do what they are called to do. If men get it and the women don't, it won't work. If women get it and the men don't, it won't work. It only works when both husbands and wives understand what it means to mutually submit, to mutually have respect, to mutually love, to mutually build one another, and see the value of listening to each other and considering their needs. It says this, men, as much as you value yourself, you need to value your wife that much. Here's what this means. It means in my marriage, men and ladies, in our marriage, we leverage all that we have that is ours for the benefit of the other. What you bring to your marriage, your ability, your capacity, your resources, all that is you are going to leverage that for the good, for the joy, for the concern, for the forward moving of your partner. You're going to watch out for their needs with everything that God has given to you. And by the way, one of the most practical applications of that, and let me just give it to you straight up because I give it to any married couple or any couple planning to marry that comes to me for premarital counseling, and it is this. You must drop the idea that there is what's yours in marriage and there's what's hers in marriage, and you must put it all together. One of the surest ways for you to create shipwreck in your marriage is to say, these are my responsibilities, these are hers, this is my money, this is her money, this is my stuff, this is her stuff. You put it together. You put it together because the Bible says the two become one. And so you put it together. Because all that you have, you're leveraging it for their good. You're watching out for their good. Imagine how that would apply to when you disagree. Just in theory that you'd ever disagree in your marriage. Imagine what that would look like if your objective in the disagreement is not to win. Your objective isn't to pummel the other person in the ground with your better argument or your louder voice or your tricky craftiness. That the objective is not to win the argument, but the objective is understanding and something that is built better going forward than it was before the argument took place. Did I say argument? What would that look like? Suddenly we would say, what we want to do when this is all said and done is something that is better than we can come up with ourselves. You know what it realizes? It realizes I might not have the same opinion as her. He might not have the same opinion as you do, ladies. But can I understand why they feel the way they do so that we can move forward and go forward with understanding, not just frustration? Because, men, I can tell you, my observation as a pastor and just as a human in 50 years is men have the ability to run over their wives, to ignore them, to be louder than them and just get their way. We usually can shout louder. We can make ourselves larger. We can storm off and do what we want. And I find that men have this unique ability to simply ignore the concerns of their wives and say, too bad, I'm just going to do it. And ladies, I found you've got more subtle ways of getting your way at times. Frankly, usually you can outsmart us, or you can outpout us, or you can nag us, you can wear us down. You have your ways, including one that's PG-13 that I won't mention out loud because there are children in the room. You have ways of winning at times. But let me tell you this. In your marriage, when a woman feels truly and genuinely loved and adored, and that her husband values her input, in your marriage, when a husband knows that his wife values him, it goes a long way in his security and his ability to sacrifice for you And together you build a life of trust and intimacy so that if a moment comes where we have to apply this verse, that the husband is the head of the home, and a decision has to be made that's a difficult decision, and when it's all said and done, if a husband has to make that decision, that wife will comfortably say, you will make it, we will do it together. You know why? Because you love me so dearly, and you care so much about my concerns, and you have so much confidence in my support of you. Together we'll go forward and do the best with what we've got to do. It will work that way. See, these are just precepts that just work because there's respect that goes back and forth. I've got to hurry on for time, but I need to say one more thing to husbands and wives, and it is this. Learn to elevate each other when you are alone, and learn to elevate each other when you are out with other people. Encourage each other. Say kind things to each other. Lift each other up. Tell them you think something they're doing is great. Thank them for doing things even when there are things they are supposed to do. Honey, no one takes the trash out like you do. That was a great meal. This house looks great. Man, I noticed all the efforts that you put into what you did today. Ladies, tell him that he's your he-man. Guys, tell her that dress looks great on her. She's the prettiest woman in the room in your eyes. You're establishing value and respect and love and adoration. And let me say this, don't just do that in the privacy of your home. You elevate them when you are in the midst of other people. Lift them up. You will fill them up inside with a joy beyond what I can describe to you when you speak well of him or you speak well of her in front of their friends. And you'll do one other thing too. When you elevate them that way and someone sees that kind of love, you also create a fence that says, stand back, stand off. That's my wife. That's my husband. Don't you get near them. Because we're building something for a lifetime. You all right? Isn't this fun? Let's keep going. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. All right, all of you that are children, so that's all of us. We all have parents. This is what we learn. In our youth, the greatest way we respect our parents is by obedience. Now, every parent in the room wants me to repeat it, so I'm going to. Kids, the greatest way you show respect and honor for your parents is by listening and obeying. It is the most direct form of honoring. In fact, it's interesting that Paul goes after the word honor here, and then he references the Big Ten, the 10 Commandments, when he talks about honoring. In fact, when you go back and look at that word honor in the Hebrew, in the 10 Commandments, it is the word kabed, which means heavy or weighty. In other words, it's a big deal when you honor your parents. Can I tell you this? We must learn respect inside of our homes as children and learn to respect our parents, because if we don't learn it inside our homes, we will not understand what it means to respect authorities outside of our home. And understand something. Every person in this room at some point has to submit yourself to some form of authority. To a boss, to someone put over to you, to official authorities, to someone. The home is the training ground for that respect. You know, one of the things that I've observed over the years, I've seen it many, many times. Parents or even grandparents, they got this toddler that's growing up and they're learning to talk. And every now and then they'll have a situation where this cute little kid, little boy or little girl, has learned how to be sassy and say things that are disrespectful or should not be said. And it's so cute coming out of those little lips with this cute little blonde girl that instead of correcting it, parents will laugh. Don't you do that. You say, that's disrespectful, sweetheart. We don't talk that way. We don't say that. We don't act that way. Because here's the thing. Any child who grows up, beyond just this age, but grows up saying, no one is going to tell me what to do, they are not only disrespectful, they are ultimately unemployable. You're free to write that one down if you want. If you cannot learn to respect in your home, you will not build respect that is necessary outside of your home. Some of you kids might say today, Pastor Todd, how do I respect and obey my parents? Sometimes my dad's a total jerk. My parents do the wrong things often. They just don't get it. And we want to use the flaws in our parents, because your parents are flawed. Just newsflash, my kids are well aware today they have flawed parents. They know. I don't have to preach it about myself. They're just amening in their head. But we cannot use the flaws in our parents as an excuse to be disrespectful. Your parents may be wrong on a regular basis, but they're not always wrong. Look, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Oh, and one more thing, kids. I know pretty regularly you think your parents are wrong, but the reality is the older you get, you might be surprised that you'll see things a little differently. One guy said it this way: the older I got, the smarter my parents must have become. Let me say one more thing about respect and honor for parents by children. Unlike the culture of Jesus' day where youth was looked down upon, in our culture today, too little respect is given for age. And this command to respect our parents goes all the way into old age. Oh, that we would value old age more than we do. I can tell you how much we value old age. How many of you are running around looking for the fountain of seniority? There should be great respect given to our parents as they age. When you're younger, we said respect is given by listening and obeying. As you get older, hear me, the way you respect your parents is by appreciation and provision. You respect your aging parents as you age and as your relationship changes, as you become an adult, and it does change. That respect is shown by appreciation and provision. It matters to your parents that they hear from you, that you interact with them in whatever way is possible, that you make time for them. I know your life is busy, but it shows them value even as they have slowed down and they cannot do with you or for you the things they used to be able to. You honor them, you show them honor by still caring for them. And then you provide for them in old age. Now look, this one's gonna be important and is getting trickier as the capacity to live longer is expanding. And many of you may face down things that me and my brothers might face down, of parents with the capacity to outlive their savings. And you know what the Bible tells us on that? From 1 Timothy 5, take care of any widow who has no one else to care for her. Can I tell you something today? If churches don't care for widows, shame on them. You all right? If churches don't find a way to care for widows, shame on them. Better figure it out. Churches better figure it out. But if she has children or grandchildren, their first responsibility is to show godliness at home and repay their parents by taking care of them. This is something that pleases God. All right, you want to make God smile today at you? You want to make God smile today at you? Start having conversations about how are we going to make sure mom and dad are taken care of as they get older. God will just smile a big old smile down on you today when you have that conversation. I'm going to think about, how am I going to care for my parents as they get older? In fact, he goes on and says this later in that chapter: if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Why? It means he has forgotten the respect that should be there, because your parents are God's precious creation. And you need to care for them. Now, I want to say something today at this point, because many of you, if you've been around me for much time at all, know that I pick on my mother-in-law all the time. All right, you know that I tell stories and jokes and all that kind of thing. And I want you to hear me today, because I have no intention to stop doing that, okay? This is what you need to know. When I joke that way, it is not a sign of disrespect. If these things hurt my mother-in-law's feelings, I would quit. She roots for me to talk that way. She says she knows that's how she knows I still love her. And my mother-in-law has lived with us for 21 years, and it's been our joy and our privilege and our pleasure to have her in our home. Dad was only 64 when he died. And if I could have his last few breaths back, I would lean down into his ear and I would say this: Dad, you need to know something. For as long as your wife is alive, she will never lack for anything, and she will never lack for a place to be. And Mom, as long as you're alive, you will never need anything. Because that's my job. That's my job as a child of God. Now listen, before any of you despair, I recognize that these length of life decisions for your parents sometimes include very hard medical decisions. They include decisions about when you get to it's beyond your ability to care for them. I am not here to heap guilt on anybody today. I'm here to say your God-given responsibility as a child is to say, God, give me wisdom, give me capacity to figure out the very best way that I can care for my parents in any way I can until they go home to be with you. That's your responsibility, and God will give you wisdom and help to know where to do that, when it can be in your home, when it can't, and all of those other things. God will give you help to make those decisions. And as you have those conversations and as you live that out, God's going to bless you for it. Oh, and by the way, you're going to live long. You're going to live long in the land according to the Bible. So, we've addressed husband to wife, we've addressed kids to parents, and so let's take a moment to wrap up by addressing parents to kids, because Paul goes on to speak to that too. One verse: fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. It might only be one verse, but this is such an important command that Paul writes this almost word for word in another letter that he writes to a church in Colossae, a book we call Colossians. He writes this very same command again. Fathers, don't exasperate your children, but bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Now, instruction, bringing them up in training and instruction of the Lord, by extension, of course, is the job of fathers and mothers. And so really this command applies to both of us. It's parents, don't exasperate your children. Now, some of you there are thinking, parents, don't exasperate your children. If I exasperate my children, I'm just firing back because they exasperate me. And as tempting as it might be and as intriguing as that might sound, the meaning to exasperate is to cause them to grow up angry and bitter. Fathers, mothers, do not treat your children in such a way that you will cause them to grow up angry and bitter. Now listen, kids are going to get angry at some stuff you do as parents. They're not going to like it when you say no. They're not going to be happy when you insist that this is what they need to do. They're not going to like it when you insist that they clean up their rooms. And I only included this in the sermon because my children are listening, and I insist, clean up your rooms. And I'm not talking about that kind of getting angry. What I'm talking about is what happens in our children when we forget today's precept of respect and value. That our children have value. First of all, it goes without saying that the quickest way to strip the worth from your children is to berate them, to demean them, to be verbally or physically abusive to them. And all I have to say to you about that is this: if you live that way, I don't want to be you on Judgment Day when you stand before God based on how much God loves kids. And so when we talk about valuing our kids and not exasperating them, there are a few other ways that I want to encourage you today to make sure you value them. The first one is this: we can value our kids by allowing them increasingly as they grow to make decisions and to put increased trust in them as is appropriate as they grow. It will create frustration and anger and bitterness in your children if you become such helicopter parents that you never let them experience life or grow. It's a cute term, helicopter parenting, but a bunch of us need to land the chopper and throw the keys away. And you release more line and increasing trust, and you let your children make decisions. Now look, if they don't do well with that trust, then you got to pull it back a little bit. But you don't pull it back forever. You don't say, well, you had your one moment and you blew it. You say, okay, how do we begin to look at this and try to redevelop this? And this matters. Otherwise, you'll exasperate your children. Favoritism exasperates our kids. We were talking about dysfunctional family. There's so many stories in the Bible about parents who favored this one because he was this way, or this one because she was that way. Listen, it can happen. It can happen very easily, especially when we're trying to blend families. And you've got kids that are flesh of your flesh and bone of your bone. And then you've got kids that your husband brings into the marriage, or the wife brings into the marriage. And I know these things can be difficult, and you don't feel like you're getting the respect from them. But you must make it a matter of prayer, and you must make it a matter of teamwork, husbands and wives, and say, we will value every kid equally in this home. You must value the one who play sports because you love sports just equally with the one who doesn't play sports and does all the things you never did. You value them the same. You value them equally or you'll exasperate them. We must listen to our children. They need to be heard. Of course, at times you're going to disagree and you're going to be right and you have a wisdom of years that they don't have and you say, hey, baby, this is how it's going to be. And I'm the parent and you're the child. And I'm the parent and I'm not your buddy. All right, and we're going to get back to that one before the series is over. But I'm the parent and you're the child, and this is how it's going to be. And it's my decision to make, and I am making this decision as your parent, doing the very best I can. But listen, when you have to make those kind of decisions, you say to them, but it doesn't mean I didn't listen and hear you out. I listened to you. I'm listening. And this is how it's going to be. And every now and then, Mom and Dad, your kids will come and complain to you about something, or will come to you with an opinion different than what you have, and all of a sudden you're going to realize, a moment's going to come up and you're going to realize, you know what? I wasn't right, they're right. Dun, dun, dun. What do you do with that moment? If you just hold to the line even though you're wrong, you exasperate your kids. But if you say, you know what? I hear you, honey, and you know what? You are right, and I need to change my position on this. That shows them that you value them, that you actually heard them. And it will mean so much to them. You want a happy home, and I want a happy home. And there's a distance sometimes between the real and the ideal. But we can begin to make up that distance when we say, in this home, everyone is respected. Everyone is valued. Everyone is loved by God. And though we each have our specific roles, we understand that we will mutually value, respect, and submit to one another out of love for Christ. Would you bow your head with me as we close today? Lord, we just ask that you'll be our help as we take what we've heard from your word today and go out these doors. And Lord, would you help us to apply these things so that husbands and wives and children, grandparents and grandkids, Lord, together would say, we want a happy home and we want to contribute to it. And so, Lord, teach us how to respect one another. God, if for some of us this means we're going to have to go home and apologize, if for some of us it means we're going to have to go home and sit down and have a family talk and say, hey, we need to change how we do some things, would you make us bold enough to have those conversations? Not someday, but to have them today, so that we might put into practice your word, and we will give you praise. Thanks for instituting families, God. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you, real life. Go in his grace. Stand up, give someone a hug. Have a great week. We'll see you next weekend. And we'll see you all week at Bible school.